All right. I represent the Future Cities Catapult, which is an innovation center that's focusing on urban transformation. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about the Future Cities Catapult. I'm going to talk a little bit more today and showing some of the work we're doing and why we're doing it. I chose the title Human-Centered Approach because one of the interesting things that we observe is when we talk about future cities, and I don't like the term smart, so you would hear me using the term future more. We always start by explaining the solution, the tools. The cloud can do this, the analytics can do that. Yet, when you go work with cities officials, they have a different language. Anyway, Future Cities Catapult is one of 12 Future Cities Catapult innovation centers in the UK. Each focus on a different area within the transformation of cities. We work very closely with the transport, sat, and digital catapults, as the three of them are related to what's happening in the world of cities today. So, when you talk to cities leader, when the Future Cities Catapult was founded, we interviewed 400 leaders around the world, and we tried to create a common top 3 pain points. What's keeping them awake at night? None of them was analytics, none of them was technology, that did not come up in any of the conversation, which is a very important message for you, for us as we approach cities. What do they talk about? They talk about, no, that jumped like 4 slides. Okay, I'll use the keyboard. Okay. You're not seeing the slides for some reason, but I'm going to talk about them anyway. They talk about 3 things. They want stronger economy, right? They want to create jobs. They want to retain their talent. They want a better quality of life, right? You are in a competing world. Cities now, it's so easy now to commute, as Estonia gentleman yesterday was saying. It used to be 9-hour trip between Estonia and Helsinki. It's becoming now 1 hour and something, and if they do the Hyperloop, it's going to be 6 minutes. The world is changing, so they have to retain their talent. And the third one they talk about is environmental impact. These are the pain points. Now, inside them, they have traffic, they have different components. And behind those components, they look for how do we fix this problem. So it's important when you go talk to cities is to, whatever you do, start from their pain points, try to figure out how you can solve their problems, and answer the biggest question in all this. What does that do for my people? Else, we will be looking like a hammer looking for a nail. And that's the message they gave us very loud and clear. Yet, they're not jumping crazy on transforming. They are at their own pace, and there is a reason why. Also, they're looking for 3 things. They're looking for evidence, proofs. So if you, the gentleman earlier was talking about the experiment of the mesh and mobility in Porto. As you start rolling out the solution from one city to the other, and they hold witness to the efficiency and the value created, then it will work. Second, they want to know how to execute. They're looking for executable plan. They don't want PowerPoint. We all have fancy, beautiful PowerPoint about all the solutions. The question is, how do we execute it? How does it fit in? And the third one, the days of cities having a check of X million euros or dollars or pounds to pay you for a transaction to do something are disappearing. They're looking for a sustainable business model. Let's talk a little bit about cities. I'm not going to talk about what is a smart city and what is not, because we have a philosophy. It has to come from the community of such a city. They have to define it on their own. We can help, and we do help, and I'll share some of the examples. But let's talk about cities' dynamics. There are, if the slides work, yes, They are a very complex system, complex because they are made of multiple stakeholders. Businesses are made of hierarchy with a unified decision-making process. Cities are made by different communities, different groups, different political directions, and nobody can make a decision unless you have a consensus, else you know what happens. But also, they don't fall over themselves in adopting technology. They are co-opted by technology. Technology of the era, of the decade, cars, trains, something that's been tested reliable at a scale. They don't like to test new ideas. They are very, very risk adverse. When you go to a city and you say, I have an innovation, you hear the word pilot. It's on the side, outside my traditional operation, because technology and innovation are often resulting in mistakes and failure, because that's the nature of innovation. We're supposed to figure it out. Now, in businesses, you can do that. In cities, you cannot. Hey, my traffic system is down because we were trying a new technology. So they're not very excited about trying new technology. It has to be tested. And they have a defining reality. They have a very limited appetite and budget. So whatever you create, it cannot be an incremental spending. If they're spending X on doing a service, you gotta look at how you can use the same money to deliver differently, or you gotta come with creative ways of securing financing. So when we face this reality in the cities, that when we started setting up the Future Cities Catapult, we asked ourselves, where can we add value? How can we help? How do we move the market forward? Because the market has been spinning in the same place. It's like on a treadmill. We're running so fast, yet we're not crossing distance. So 3 points we decided where we can add value. One is new behavior and demand management. So we started saying, okay, we got to encourage that. And how do we do that? Is by simply looking at working on the demand side. So by bringing the cities to the forefront of the conversation. Because if you look at the history of the evolution of the debate of the smart city, it has been supply driven. Technology company who has connectivity defined a story around what is a smart city. It's smart if you're connected. Companies that have analytic define smart city based, because it's our nature. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the definition of cities. So we needed to bring them to the front so they can define what it is for you. And then we moved to improving resource efficiency and service productivity. If we show them low-hanging fruits, if we give them value, on the back of the value, we can start layering the value-added services or ideas. And most importantly, how do we enable citizen and user participation? Because it's about the people, we have to bring the people into the mix. And in some of the examples, I will talk about how. So hence the mission of the Future Cities Catapult was to advance urban innovation, to grow businesses, to make cities better. And we started from there. And we started building a team. As you will see, I'm not going to read every single one. Technology is just not the only picture here. This is the structure of the people, 105 people. They are anthropologists, data scientists, prototyper, planners, and service designers. Because you're changing the way you operate in cities. You got to bring the whole different perspective. And I think yesterday the panel was about what planners do. It's about bringing the discipline across that smart city is not just a technological debate. It is enabled by technology. It is a critical component technology, but to do what? And that's what we need to understand. We're supported by world-class capabilities, project delivery partners, and teams. We work with an ecosystem. So rarely any project we do it on our own. It's about bringing the ecosystem, SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises, and many times we have large corporate also involved. And then we built 3 core capabilities. And they are grouped at a high level under connected cities. Yes, connectivity is very important. But connectivity is not just a physical term, right? City strategies, cities are saying, I don't know how to go about it. I want to know what is the process to move from where I am to where I want to be, and help me go through that. And urban data science, because you all highlighted the fact that data is a very important element. Skip that one. So we started mapping, I don't know if you can see the slide. We started mapping all the city challenges we captured in our discussions, and we said where we can add value. And where we can add value, we decided is where there is a market potential and a fit and capability for us. But these are their needs. Now, another catapult might take that international connectivity or recycling and have it a top priority because that's their capability. But as a future city catapult, we looked at our capability and we grouped them into this. So we're focusing on high priority project and investment and strategic investment. So you will see all our work in this space. And then we started looking at them, do they have something in common? And that's what we came with. So we focus today on 3 pillars. Integrated urban planning. There's a lot, so which what we call the horizontal layer, right? You go to, sometimes, I don't know if you've come across that, but I have. One day they're digging the road. What's going on? Some water leak. 3 months later, they're digging the same road. What's going on? Putting a telephone cable. 6 months later, the same. Can't you talk to each other, guys? They can, but they have no system to help them work together. So we're working with planners and city data to say, when you put this and you have a holistic view, please go do that 1 time, not 3 times. Not only it's inconvenience for people and frustrating, but also you save a lot of money. And there's a lot of demand by city. It's not like they don't know that, they know that, but they had no way of dealing with it before. And that's where technology, so you see the story has to be different. Now, what can you do, or what can technology, what can the companies that are involved do to help? Healthy cities. We talked yesterday about inclusiveness and fair and transparent cities and whatnot. How do you make the city experienced by its people irrelevant of their age, their impairment, their disabilities, their limitations? So if I have visual problems, I want to experience my city. Today, we don't, and I'll talk about a project in a second about if I am a millennial, I want to experience the city differently. If I am a fanatic of running and cycling. So we have different experience in city, and if we start taking those into consideration, this is where you start defining how you want to be a future cities. And of course, urban mobility, because this is, you cannot define urban mobility as it used to be before, which is a vehicle matter. It's not about transporting whether it's human or goods. It's about changing the dynamic on the street. And this is what also we'll talk about. These are a little bit of more details. So what we do to add value to the debate, we scan the market in 2 big areas. Content. So our R&D team is reviewing at any time around 100, 120 different innovative technologies and ideas. So we understand what's going on in the market, robotics, analytics, artificial intelligence, name it. And then on the other side, we look at the market behavior, right? Who's doing what are the trends? And then where we focus is not here on the content that intersects with the market, but also we make bets on market which has no technology, but the demand side are saying we need an answer for that. So we prototype, we catapult, we invest in R&D with companies to create new solutions for a problem that the market has acknowledged, but we don't have a technological answer. This is some of the value packages. I mean, you will have these slides later, and you can go through them. This is not meant to say anything, just to give you an idea about, for example, some of the projects, Belfast, Dubai, City Academy is about defining city strategies. Cities asking us, how do I? Then future of campus. We got a Glasgow campus saying, well, we want to start thinking about the campus, how it will be in the next 30, 40, 50 years. Data tools. All these are European projects with multiple cities, and some of them across multiple cities in the UK. The starting point for us is rich data, not big data. So we focus on the rich data, and then we validate it through big data. And when I talk about rich data, as you could see, the keywords that on the screen, it's about social impact. It's about qualitative context. It's about asking the right question to the users. It's about understanding the driving point, because else you will be sucked into the world of data. It's too big. You go again, your risk being like a hammer looking for a nail. Start from a point is what you're trying to do. But what we're seeing is in the market is, you're all familiar with this famous quote flying around. But this is very important because the business model shift that's happening in the business is the same that is blocking cities from transforming. There is a fundamental shift in business model that is changing our life, and probably you can relate to many other names and stories. Companies disappearing, others popping up. If you look here, you have some historical companies, names that we've been hearing about, founded in years 1850, 1900, and they are today worth $90 billion. Suddenly you have a Facebook or Uber or whatnot, none of them founded before 2006, and they are worth or estimated or pre-IPO in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, it has nothing to do with cities on their own, but this business model disruption is moving into cities. Now, I'm not saying the value of the city will decrease, but it will in a different way. Would your people leave you to go to a better place? It's the same happening everywhere. How do we monetize all these new ideas? We cannot just keep going through a traditional procurement to solve a problem. All the ideas that spinning out of innovation, cities are not designed to cope with this idea. These procurement laws have been around for tens of years, if not more. So, for a business model to work, and this is very important, it's a balance of three: desirability, feasibility, and viability. There is a defining realities in cities. We can come with brilliant ideas. If they're not viable financially, they're not going to work. They're going to fall apart. You can pilot them. You can spend some money, fund money on them, but they will not live on their own. So it's an act of balancing the three to get a sustainable business model in cities, and this is very important for business. I'm going to talk a little bit about some projects here very quickly. More human cities, and this is, as you can see, this is a theme, and it's embedded, as I will talk a little bit more, in the theme of the Future Cities Catapult. Cities Unlocked is a project where we wanted people with certain visual disability to get to enjoy cities. So you go to parks, you have voice recorded and technological hotspots where people, as they walk by, the voice will get activated and they will describe the scenery around them. The idea is to showcase that technology can transform and change the experience of people and can bring more inclusiveness into the process. And we have few pilots of similar nature in the UK. Sorry. Something. So we operate in cities, but cities are made of districts, campuses, stations, streets. So we have projects all across. And I'm going to walk through the campus I mentioned before. It started by spending a few days interviewing users. How can we design a campus of the future if the users of the campus of the future are not involved in the design of their world? So you start by understanding the existing users and the next generation users. And then you create a normalization between the view. And then you go back to the actual stakeholders that are running the campus, and you present to them the expectation. And you consolidate, and you come with a normalized view where you convert it into design principles, and then from there, simulation and concept of applications, and then they decide what they want to do with it. So now we have a blueprint. It's a whole big project, it's a snapshot of, you can access all this information on the Future Cities Catapult website, or if you need, get in touch and we will put you with the project manager. So I found this sentence a very powerful sentence, and you can export it to cities. The smart campus actively learns from and adapts to the needs of its people and place. People and place. And yesterday we touched on those two keywords. Cities are about people, cities are about place. Unlocking the potential of transformative technology. So, but you start by focusing on how do you impact or how do you adapt to the changing needs of people. We talked about baby boomers and then the millennials. Now we have generation Y and Z, right? The generation is changing, the world is changing, and cities will have to evolve. Stations, another example of blueprinting the station of the future. The station of the future is about having a more efficient experience, a more user-driven experience. So also the starting point was talking to regular travelers or tourists or random travelers and talk about their existing experience in the station and what they find efficient or inefficient and what's their expectation. And from there you go back to the design principle and put some ideas to design solution. Of course, these solutions you'll have to develop a business case because some of them will be sustainable, some of them may be a cost, and then you have to value the output outcome versus the investment. You might decide that this is not a sustainable solution, but it's a critical solution for a reason. We have a video here. I don't know if it's going to work. So this is a kind of view of future gazing. So some of the work we do is cool. So we take like Google glasses, and the idea is if you're a cyclist and you love cycling, we want you to see on the side of your screen the basic information you need to be safe and to enjoy, which is a clean path or a distance, how many kilometers to your destination, or if you program is turn right, turn left, just something without you holding your phone and whatnot. And another one was to put a small IoT device by a startup that just gives you an arrow signal as you cycle. So we play with this technology just to help those startups align their product with the user. And so we bring the users, we bring the SMEs into the mix, we put them in a pilot with a clear set of criteria to experiment and define. Yesterday, in the energy discussion, a gentleman talked about the peak of energy. The peak is a problem in cities for everything, for transport, for water, for energy, for everything. So this is a good experiment. It started by having a citizen insight into, as they commute in Milton Keynes, which area frustrates them, the red faces. And to capture this, we had to do a series of interviews. I think yesterday you called it street walks, the terminology, something of the qualitative approach to understand the people perception of their experience as they commute. And once we identified the good spots and the unhappy spots, we started looking at assessing the data of the transportation level. When you manage the peak, there are only two ways. There's no third way of managing the peak. Either you add more capacity or you distribute the overload, right? If you see the curve of the peak, it goes like this, and you have a surge. You build your city infrastructure for that moment in time where it's peak, but the rest of the day, it's operating at half capacity. So you have obsolete assets, non-utilized assets. So typically, historically, we add more capacity, more power plant, more roads. Done. We don't have any more place to add. So now you got to take that peak and redistribute it, stretch it. And that's what the project is all about. But when you do this, if you start from the people happiness, so what they're saying is they wanted more cycling, less car, less pollution, more public transportation. But when you do that, you have to assess the impact on other things because they are all interlocked. If we remove yesterday somebody said, we have to remove all the cars from the city. If that's what people want and the consequences are something they can accept, let it be. But not in every city people want to get rid of cars or public transportation and move into walking and cycling. So here we look at the different stress levels and the impact and the sequence of the ecosystem. This is done with a small startup called Red Ninja, which is a fascinating project. It's redefining the life emergency. I think there is a video here in the background. So what we've done is, in the UK, the difference between surviving an emergency or unfortunately dying is a matter of a minute. So that's how delicate. And if the emergency services arrive within a minute earlier, then your life expectancy or saving you becomes 60% higher. So what we've done here, we went to the field and we worked with all the departments that are involved in this process. And we studied the behavior and the issues and the challenges. And we came back with a whole different process redefinition with them about how they can change the process of emergency response. But of course, there are certain technological applications here where you need to do that will require time. So people behavior, when you hear a siren behind you, how do you behave? So we had people studying the behavior of people when you have, like this one, coming behind. It's an erratic behavior, and there is no synergy in how people react. Everyone reacts differently. And the question was, how do we work around it? So as you can see, we work with the ambulance services, with the police, with the city officials. We designed we converted people behavior into diagrams and whatnot, and we came with a recommendation on how we educate the community. So the outcome is not technological only. The outcome was an educational program, which was key for people like me, like you, when we're driving and there's a siren behind us, what they expect you to do. You know, hitting the car next to you is not what they want you to do. Jumping on a pavement, hitting a pedestrian is not what they want you to do. So what do they want you to do? So we issued a book. You can see it online in a PDF format, which was distributed to the community. But also there was technological activities that we had to do in the services to help them be more efficient. This is another interesting project. It's about people reaction to air quality. We work with Enfield Council and we built a simulation tool that allows the council to assess how different intervention might change air quality. It's all around people behavior, right? So the prototypes, and they got actually reviewed. So as we started playing on the human interaction and behavioral change, we started looking at changing the travel habits, the mode of travel, and so on and so forth. And we started looking at the impact of traveling, let's say, instead of a car and a train. And then we put it in the simulator and we showed them the impact on air quality. But further, we ended up going further than that by saying, here are some concepts that people do react to what they see. If we keep telling them what's the problem, they're smart, they understand it, but it gets more engraved when they see it, when they feel it. So here the idea is to put on the street lights something visual to show you pollution. So people start saying, oh, I didn't know. And we did a small experiment and it actually worked. It did actually work. The second idea that was, we start putting on the traffic light. It's not just a traffic light, but it doesn't take a lot to read the environment and tell you, don't stand on this side of the pavement because you're breathing pure CO2 unless you enjoy it. Go on the other side. Right. So kind of like, so people start being aware subconsciously, because we always say, yeah, traffic pollution. But we're standing there, we're not understanding how bad is this pollution. So how can we start having people react to that? And what would driver do if their exhaust fan was on the front, right? If you don't see it, it doesn't exist. So that would be useful for old school drivers like me. I gave up my car, actually. How do we encourage families to do carpooling? And by simply kind of doing something around the school that, one, prioritize the carpooling, but more importantly, showing the impact of one car picking up one kid, and so on and so forth. Then we took all these ideas and we put them, all of them are pilots in these cities, in Elephant and Castle in London, Tower Bridge, Brixton, Hyde Park, Enfield. So they moved from concept into actual pilot. They're not just nice drawings on a screen. But we work outside the UK. We work with the city of Dubai, which is the Urban Mobility International Index. I'm trying to remember what's UMII, so it's not easy. But this is where we looked at, across multiple cities, working together to create a new standard for urban mobility. This is also one of the activities we do a lot around standardization, is how do we learn from one environment, one city, one project, and then try to take it to other cities and help them accelerate. But also, if you heard, Dubai wanted to be happy city. And when people read this, they laugh. And I don't think we should, because it's probably the most interesting concept, because it started by the people. And guess what? It is delivering evidence of that. By defining a happy city, that statement that came from the government had to be translated into, so what does it mean? This is where the Future Cities Catapult has been involved with the city of Dubai on working on breaking down that big tagline into an actionable project. And today, they have a lot of, and we used in this actually a lot of different, there are 4 different ways of simulation. The 4 of them are being used actually in Dubai, which is fascinating, right? There is the traditional dashboard, which is what we see in London typically, where different departments report different KPIs. You have the 3D visualization. If you're familiar with BIM, there is a SIM, or a Building Information Management, City Information Management. There are different city modeling, which is taking the data and putting it, and then simulators. And this is the most complex, where you start saying, if I want people to be 60% residential, 30% commercial, 10% public space, how does commuting look like if I have one train station every 2 kilometers? And then you simulate a lot of things. You feed the data and you start looking. All this has been used, and then some of the outcome of this is kind of being done in Dubai also. People are having now on their device live feed travel update. They're following their visa application. So when they interviewed the citizen about what makes you happy, what frustrates you, they capture a series of things that goes from government interaction to traveling experience to different things. And I mean, some of them are not really related. And then they put a program in place to deliver. I'm going to use some notes here because I'm going to use some quotes. Forgive me. 1 minute? Okay. As a closing note, we believe a lot in the power to cities. It's an era of cities. Nations are holding the vision and the decision, but things are being done and shaped at the cities level by the communities. And we are working with each of those great thinkers into this. Our urbanist team, I'm going to skip to the next one, but you will read these quotes later, are very much influenced by Charles Montgomery and Jane Jacobs. And I want to just take a quote that's related to your discussion here. She said, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody, only because and only when they are created by everybody. Thank you.
I think that was filled with quite a lot of thought-provoking areas, and you covered an enormous amount of ground to give us that introduction. I'm sure there are questions, so do please stick your hands up, because there are so many issues that were addressed within that framework. If no one has, I will start off. Earlier, you showed 3 things which you said were essential, and it was a long way back in your slides. There were 3 things, and I felt there might need to be a 4th there, because you addressed the topic of business model disruption, and also, as some might say, innovation. But innovation doesn't necessarily result in an improvement in social good. So a city has to look after the fabric of its inhabitants. So I felt acceptability might have been is something that is happening acceptable for the citizens? For example, is it in London's interest that a lot of people are employed by Deliveroo, et cetera, et cetera? These are I don't want to say yes or no, but there are lots of contentious issues which suddenly become highly visible because something happens in commerce or industry. I know it's not your role to take a view on those things, but how do you connect social good into some of the more concrete phenomena that you discussed?
When the concept of smart city, or whatever you want to name it, and by the way, I have witnessed in my career 21 different terminology. I can list them. I promise you I can. When we started, so cities has two big components. There is the operation side, which is the decision maker efficiency to keep the city running. Because smart city started by the business, we went to the buyer. This is where the check is. So we thought a lot about how can technology transform the operation. Now, as this topic of city and data emerging, and then the citizen-centric, now we have a long way to learn. I think we are more mature on delivering efficient energy management, mobility, apps, those technologically driven for efficiency. But to try to understand and engage citizens, we're on a journey. And to me, it's by encouraging working group. We have a long way to go still. You cannot guarantee acceptability, but you can guarantee that if you take the consensus of the people involved in shaping up the priorities, you will get a higher level of acceptability.
I think you hinted towards what that might look like in the future through the project you reported in Dubai, looking at, the goal is happiness. So how do we get there was really what you were saying there. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, well, I'm sure you'll be happy to hear questions at other points, but thank you very much indeed.